everybody, my name is Ian Fennelly and I am an urban sketcher, and I'm going to share with you today some of my materials that I use when I'm working outside on location trying to capture stories all around the world. So I'm going to show you four things. I'm going to start off talking about my paper, then I'm going to talk about my pens, then I'm going to talk about my brushes, and then I'm going to talk about my paints. So first of all, I'd like to share with you the paper that I use. Now I use Fabriano, and it's a hot press paper, which means it's super smooth, which is great for drawing, but it's not great for painting. It's actually quite challenging, but I like that. Now this is A3 in size, which means it's big. And that really suits me because my pictures are quite complicated. I like to put a lot of detail in. I like to capture a big, wide story. So the size is absolutely perfect. So this pad that you can see in front of you, you get 25 sheets. It's 50% cotton. It's great quality. The next thing I'd like to share with you are the pens that I use. Now I use a range of pens. I use fine liners and I use brush pens. Now the fine liners that I use come in two different types. You've got these ones which are fibre tipped, and these ones happen to be Staedtler, but I sometimes use Faber-Castell, I sometimes use Pilot, I sometimes use Derwent's. But the common factor in all of them is that they're black and they're thin, and they come in a variety of thicknesses. So these range from 0.05 to 0.1, 0.2 and 0.3. And these are permanent as well. So if you draw with them and then you put watercolour on top, they won't dissolve, they won't mix in with the water. Now these are uniballs, and the difference between these is they're thicker, and they come in two different varieties. You've got a broad one and you've got a thin one, but these are water soluble, so you have to be careful with these. So I tend to use these at the end of the process when I'm pretty certain I'm not going to put any more colour on. And the great thing about these is because they're rollable, you can kind of really alter the angle as you're trying to draw, and you can get some really thick black areas of line work. These are the brush pens, and these are made by Tombow, and they're dual tipped, which basically means on one side you've got a brushy part, and on the other side you've got a fine liner part. Now the fine liner part I often use with this one in particular, which is the N79. I use this one for sketching out to begin with, and it behaves in a very similar way to a soft-leaded 2B pencil. The brushy part, which is much broader, is great for capturing areas of tone. Now I tend to only use 5 different ones. I use the black one, which is the 15. I use the two mid-grey ones, the warm grey and the cool grey. This is the 79 and this is the 60. And then I use the 89 and the 95. So these are two light grey ones. That's a creamy light grey, and that's a much cooler light grey. So they're the only value ones that I use, and I tend to focus very much on the kind of grey value ones because they're wonderful to work alongside the colour, which I'm going to talk about in a few moments. So these are all the pens that I use. Now the brushes are very limited in terms of the range that I use, and again they come in two kind of categories really. We've got the flats here and we've got the riggers. Now the flats, I've got a big flat, and you can see that guy's been used many times, and these are great for big broad washes of colour. This is a medium flat, and that's a kind of baby flat, and these are great just for building up layers, building up glazes, really letting the colours have a play on the page. Now in terms of the riggers, these are great for much more specific line work when you want to capture individual shapes or you want to take a line for a walk, and I really toggle between the two. So these are the broad ones for big washes, and these are for much more specific areas of colour and really drawing in paint, because essentially that's what I do as an urban sketcher. The painting stage is very much a continuation of the drawing process. And finally, the last thing I'd like to share with you are the colours. Now this is my palette. I've just come back from from Italy. You can see it's well used, it's a working palette. These are all Winsor & Newton colours, so they're very, very good professional quality. I've always used Winsor & Newton. I sometimes use a few other brands as well, but I tend to stick to the same brand because I know how they behave. So for example, if you've got a colour like burnt sienna and you try Winsor & Newton burnt sienna, or you go for Daniel Smith, or you go for Schminke or Old Holland, or wherever it might be, that colour's going to behave slightly differently because they're all made in a slightly different way. But if you stick to the same brand, you know what to expect. Now, the way I organise my colours is I always start off with the black and the white at the end, and I've got my family of blues here, my family of greens, my browns, my deep rich reds, my mid reds, my oranges, my yellows, and my whites. And you can see some of them, like cerulean blue, has had a real beating recently, as has burnt sienna, as has ultramarine blues. And they're kind of my favourite colours. So I use a whole range of different colours when I'm painting outside on location. I don't use all of them at once. Obviously, I try and limit my palette, but I have all of these available to me when I'm going to be working outside. So that really is just a journey through my materials, the paper that I use, the brushes that I use, the pens that I use, and the colours. And I hope that was useful for you.